Welcome, everyone. Glad you could join our interview. We have a special guest, Aylon Steinhart, who is the founder of Eclipse Foods, an exciting plant-based ice cream. And we're here to hear about his story and how he got here and other things he can share with you. This is obviously an area of high interest. Everybody seems to be jumping on the plant-based bandwagon, including ourselves at CJB and Associates. So we're anxious to hear more about it. Aylon, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So just give us a little bit of background, Aylon. I understand you started in photography and now you're in the food tech world. So if you could just give us a little recap how you got here, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a lot of people bring up my photography days, so it's nice to delve into that past. So the brief story is that I had co-founded a software business in the photography space. And a few years into that, actually watched a documentary, pretty cliche, called Cowspiracy. And that documentary outlined really the impact of industrial animal agriculture on the planet, on people, and on animals, but mostly about the planet and the real numbers behind it. So looking at not like a heartstrings approach, but really a data-driven approach. And I realized at that moment that that was not a system that I wanted to support as a self-proclaimed environmentalist. So I changed my diet, and I thought I was doing a good job. And then about a year later, my friend sent me a link about this product that I'd never heard of before. And it was the Impossible Burger. It had just launched into market. It was just launching into market. And this was like a big aha moment for me, because I saw, here's a product that is blending my personal passion, which is changing the food system to create a more sustainable, healthy, and humane world, with my professional passion, which is entrepreneurship and innovation. So in that moment, I said, okay, I have to start a company in this space. And so from there, I joined a nonprofit. It's called the Good Food Institute. It's the leading nonprofit in the alternative protein space. I helped start their innovation department, running an incubator for other brands in the space, and then also speaking in all the top universities to get the best and brightest minds to create companies that change the food system. And then from there, I got the opportunity to partner with my co-founder, Thomas Bowman. He was the director of product development at Hampton Creek at the time. And I said, this guy is the guy to partner with to change the food system and create Eclipse. And so that's kind of the very short story of the journey.
It's quite a journey and very exciting. Well, it's still quite a transition to go from the tech world with creating a technology for photography to the food. Why food? I mean, I hear the piece about the environmental piece, and it is true. It is absolutely atrocious what the current industry is doing to the environment. So I understand the passion for that, but how did you end up with food? I mean, there are other ways to help the environment.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. When I looked at kind of what I could have the largest impact in, actually similar to when Pat Brown, who was a professor at Stanford at the time, started Impossible, he looked around and he said, where can I have the most impact? And he took a sabbatical to go work on Impossible Foods, because he realized what I realized a few years after him, that food is the single most repeatable thing that people do on a regular basis, right? That has an impact on the environment and on their health and on animals. And sort of looking at, well, where can I use my abilities to drive the most change? I identified that it was through food, because if we could just get people to eat fewer products that come from industrial animal agriculture, then we can make a sustainable change day after day after day. And of course, it's a massive task, but it's one that at least individuals can control, right? Like, it's harder to control whether you drive a car to work or not if you have to go to work in order to survive. It's less hard to change an incredible bowl of ice cream that's made from dairy for an incredible bowl of ice cream that's made from a blend of plants like Eclipse, if it requires no sacrifice. And so there was that opportunity to just switch people over in a way that was actually feasible. And I think it's that feasibility leading to that mission impact that really drove me to be part of the industry.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about that. I've spent most of my life in the food business, and perhaps when you're immersed in the food business, you just take for granted that, yeah, it's something everybody has to do on a daily basis. And whereas other options like tech, they may be nice to have, but you can live with them or live without them, but you can't live without food. So that's an interesting perspective. Appreciate that. Now, given that you've decided to go into the food world and go plant-based, that's still a pretty big space. I mean, you've got burgers, you've got cheese, you've got just about everything in the aisle now can feature plant-based. Why ice cream?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is that Eclipse is actually much broader than just ice cream. We're an entire dairy platform, and I can go into the technology of what that is and how we do it. But to answer your question very directly, the world that and Thomas and I, when we were first deciding what products should we make, the world that we really saw was a world that was dominated by Impossible and Beyond making meat products that could actually replace real meat, like cow-based meat and beyond. And then Just was doing a good job with some egg products, right? And when I say a good job, I mean creating products that actually appeal to mainstream consumers. So basically all of the research on consumer purchasing decisions for food shows that consumers make their decisions based on taste, price, and availability. And the taste thing was the thing that the plant-based industry was completely lacking. And so we looked at a world where we said, okay, Impossible and Beyond are actually making these products that a mainstream consumer, a flexitarian, will say, I'm actually going to substitute my cow hamburger for my plant-based hamburger. Before that, no one would have said, I'm going to substitute my cow hamburger for a quinoa burger. It just wasn't on the same plane. And so we said, where can we make that same impact in a plant-based space? And dairy was a very, very obvious choice. Because, of course, there were plenty of soy milks or cashew ice creams or oat cheese or whatever have you, like these hero ingredient products that appeal to a very small sector of the market. And we said, no, we need to create something that appeals to mainstream consumers, that is actually a replacement, not a substitute, and that then can transform the food system.
And who doesn't like ice cream, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. And to answer your question about ice cream specifically, so we decided to make this dairy platform. We created a milk that functions like a dairy milk. Mm-hmm. And that's our secret sauce, is literally our secret sauce. We use this milk to create cheese like cheese is made, ice cream like ice cream is made, creams like creams are made. And the end result of that process is that we have that taste, texture, and functionality of dairy, right? And so when we started out, we had a blank slate, and we said, okay, we could create any dairy product. And Thomas, being this creative food genius, did. He went kind of crazy and made dozens of products. But then we said, okay, we have to focus. And what in the dairy category is what we want to start building our brand around? We knew we were building a consumer-facing brand, and we said ice cream is the perfect choice for 3 reasons. The first is that people are fanatical about ice cream. So like you said, who doesn't like ice cream? And so much so that it's one of the only food groups that people are willing to stand outside in negative degree weather for, just for a scoop of ice cream. And we achieved that when we launched in New York. It was negative degrees Celsius, but below 0. And the second thing is that ice cream is center of plate. So a part of dairy that's interesting is that the dairy product is actually frequently the co-star, right? People go for cereal and milk, bagel and cream cheese. But ice cream is the center of the plate. It's what people think about. And as we're growing a brand, we want people to think and really think like, oh, after dinner tonight, I'm going to eat Eclipse. And then the last thing is that the opportunity for ice cream is massive. In food service, it's actually a $14.7 billion opportunity for ice cream. There's virtually no plant-based ice cream in food service, so that's a big focus for us. And then in retail, it's $14.3 billion, also massive. And while there are a lot of players in there, I would say that there were a lot of black bean burgers out there before Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods came around. And I think that the category needs to step up, and that's exactly what we're bringing.
Well, it's a huge category, so that makes sense. Now, we are going to get into the technology a little bit later. Listen, my world is research and development, so I am interested in the technology, at least as much as you're willing to share. But you said you're doing a dairy platform, so what comes after ice cream?
Yeah, the answer to that question directly, I can't answer, but I can say that we've prototyped a lot of different things, from various different types of cheeses to, of course, our milk, which works as a milk, to cream cheese and sour cream. And what's interesting is our ice cream base actually works well as a whipped cream. And we worked with some amazing James Beard awarded and Michelin star chefs, and we hand off our base to them, and they spin it up in ways that we never even thought about. Like, I came to an event and the chef had made a creme anglaise with our base and a semi-freddo, and I think that might have been the first time I ever ate a semi-freddo. So I was like, okay, this is really cool. A lot of firsts here. So yeah, the world is kind of our oyster in terms of what we'll release, and I think in a big way, it also depends on the partners that we're working with today, and yeah, where the market's at.
Interesting. So that makes a lot of sense now, and I understand that ice cream probably has more upside where we're at right now than the meat analogs, which, although there's plenty of room for growth, you've already got some pretty big heavy hitters already doing pretty well there. But it's not, you don't have the ice cream space or the dairy space for that matter to yourself by any means. You got emerging players, whether it's Deo or Mukis and BioLife more on the cheese side, albeit, but you definitely have some ice creams coming out there as well. So I do want to ask you a little bit about your secret sauce. What is your advantage versus those other players who are also hoping to get a piece of that large category that you talked about?
Yeah, I think before I talk about the secret sauce, I'll say that we love our competitors, and we see them as much competitors as collaborators, because in the end, the plant-based dairy market is a teeny tiny fraction of the entire dairy market, right? It's like 2 or 3% in terms of dollar volume. And so there is so much room to take market share from the traditional dairy market that absolutely we can all exist together, and we can all serve different segments. And you know what? We can all serve similar segments too. And as long as more and more consumers are coming into the plant-based side of things, we are all winning. So it truly is very early days, the rising tide lifting all boats, which I'm sure a lot of industries maybe would want to say this, but it's nice to be in an industry where that's actually true. And there's a lot more collaboration than I've ever seen in any other industry. Now, with that said, what is Eclipse's secret sauce? And the reason that all the investors that have invested in us, like Seth Goldman, the chair of Beyond Meat, and Alexis Ohanian, the founder of Reddit, and the guy who created Gmail, and former Dryers exec, all these folks that are visionaries, what attracted them to Eclipse? And it really comes down to as I said, like the milk and its functionality. So we've created the first ever plant-based milk that has that functionality from what we need it to do of dairy milk. And going a little bit more under the hood, right, is probably folks in this community are familiar with dairy micelles. So the microscopic structures that are associated with the casein protein, right? They have these hydrophobic heads and hydrophilic tails, and so they're ultra stable, and they essentially just capture fat, right? And so that is the magic of milk. Like, that's what allows a liquid milk to turn into a semi-solid like a cream, or a solid like a cheese. And really the micelles are a big part of that. And so we've created the first ever plant-based milk that actually has micelles that mimic these spherical micelles, and therefore allow us to use the milk to create, again, like cheese is made, ice cream like ice cream is made. And that process in dairy, for those who know dairy well, the process of creating products actually has a massive impact on the taste, the texture, and the functionality. So that's, in terms of the product, is really our secret sauce. But what's beautiful about that is it also cascades into everything else. So because we are using this milk that functions like milk, well, now we can run on dairy lines. So we don't have to, unlike a lot of our competitors, we don't have to create custom equipment and machinery and processes just to get our product scaled. In fact, we can scale on dairy lines, and as we know, with dairy declining, there's more and more line time opening, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper. And so there's just this perfect confluence of both the product and the production, and then of course the consumer. And that's why we're really excited.
Well, that's really helpful, Aylon, and I totally get that where you're headed with that, the technology. It's fascinating to me, and probably half my audience, the engineers and scientists, the food geeks, would like to spend all day. The other half is saying, come on, Carlos, let's move on to the interesting bits like sales and marketing and how we got there. So, but I do appreciate that. And I do know that the casein in milk is a special kind of protein. And I get that you're mimicking some of the functionality that makes a lot of sense, I imagine, for texture, functionality, and ultimately taste. So fascinating. But let's move on. Let's talk about who you're selling to, because you've also had to go through COVID, and that's had some impact on who you're selling to and how you're selling to. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your retail channels and how you decided to go where you're going, and if that's changed since you started, and changed how you versus where you maybe originally thought you would be.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you the story, because it's a dramatic one, and everyone likes a little bit of drama in business. Before that, I will say for all your technical audience that the problems we're solving are very, very, very new to the world. Like, no one has done what we're doing, and so it is a really fascinating sect of food science and engineering that is there's just a lot of really exciting problems to solve. So if anyone does want to talk about it, just let us know. We're here. We love to talk food science.
Right,
but with that,
for the techno geeks.
What is that?
We'll have a follow-up session for the guys who can't get enough of the technology.
Yeah, definitely. So the story of us going to market. So in late 2019, so November 2019, we actually launched in 2 high-end ice cream shops. So we were following really that footsteps of Impossible Foods with the go-to-market. Mm-hmm. We said, let's go and work with the best of the best in ice cream to prove that this product is the best of the best. Because a really high-end ice cream shop, a really well-respected ice cream shop, is not going to bring in a product and make a big deal out of it if it's not something exceptional. And so we wanted to do that to prove that, and we did exactly that. So we launched with Oddfellows in the East Coast in New York. It's an ice cream chain started by the legendary pastry chef Sam Mason. And then on the West Coast, we launched with Humphreys Loco, which is the Food Network top 5 rated ice cream. And what we did is we gave them the base. We have this liquid base that functions like a dairy base. They spun up their own ice cream. They created the collaborate, like Eclipse and Humphreys Loco flavor, right? So very similar to how with Impossible you would get the little flag on the burger. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge hit and got a lot of attention. So we were on the front page of CNN. We were in SF Chronicle, in print. We were in the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, like 130 plus articles written about Eclipse coming to market, which was extremely exciting and totally achieved the goal, which was to get inbound interest from all these food service operators. So we had hundreds of businesses reaching out saying, hey, we want this product. And things were going really well. We were actually in Google, and they were doubling their orders. We were getting set up. I can't say all these publicly, but we were getting set up in several regional chains. We actually got set up with Cream, which does ice cream sandwiches. At the time before COVID, they were a nationwide chain. So a lot of momentum there, and it just kept building and building and building. Some really big names that, you would recognize. And then COVID happened, and we lost significant amounts of business, almost all of our business overnight. And we said, okay, we have to do something here. We have to retool. We're far overexposed in the food service sector. So we introduced direct-to-consumer and retail. So for direct-to-consumer, we actually launched shop.eclipsefoods.com. We partnered with some of the best chefs in the nation, including Michael Tusk. He's got 3 Michelin stars at Quince here in San Francisco. Corey Lee, also 3 Michelin stars, and a bunch of other folks in New York and all around. And we worked with them to create collaboration flavors, limited time, and we put those on our website. And those both benefited Eclipse, right, from a branding perspective and partnering with these amazing people. But we also got to donate some of the proceeds back to the charity of the chef's choice. So that was a really good way to continue that relationship with the food service industry while also building up our own direct-to-consumer channel. And then in retail, we basically had to reinvent the wheel completely. We were a food service company. We didn't have pints. We didn't have products that were appropriate for retail, but we had to make it happen. So the team really hustled. We got 3 flavors out, started putting them in stores, and the reception was amazing. We actually, for our flagship flavor in our flagship store, we were moving, I forget what the actual number was. It was like 8 times, that's it. It's 8 times faster than the average plant-based pint in the market. So it was just a really, really good. Yeah. But even outside of that flagship store, this flavor was performing at like 3 to 4 times faster than your average plant-based pint in market. So overall, the reception was really good, and now we're rolling out in a big way. So if you live in the West Coast, you should be seeing us pop up in a lot of different stores that you shop at, and more regions to come, unannounced yet, but a big expansion in the retail front happening as we speak. And then we're also totally still in food service. We are working with Afters Ice Cream in SoCal. It's a 30 location chain, and we're continuing to grow that footprint. So exciting times for the people who are more interested on the business side.
Well, I imagine that also, I mean, eventually people will start to be able to congregate again, and you must be looking forward to seeing a renewed bump in that segment. At the same time, you've got the direct-to-consumer and the retail going, so perhaps in the long run, you benefited from what must have been a real upheaval just a year ago.
It certainly caused us to make changes that we were not planning to make for a long time. We were always going to go into retail. The vision for the ice cream was always in food service to be in every single Dairy Queen, Wendy's, Sonic's, etc. And then that's in food service. And then, in retail to be in every single Whole Foods, but also every single Walmart. We just went a little bit sooner to that retail side than we anticipated.
Now, on the retail side, is it all going to be under the Eclipse brand, or are you also doing some store brands or licensing your milk technology to other brands? Is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the answer is a little bit of everything. We definitely are putting most of our efforts into the Eclipse brand right now, but we're also having conversations with folks who say, hey, why would I create my own plant-based pints? I'm not an expert in this. My pints are not going to sell as well as if I use Eclipse's base and then create collaborative pints between Eclipse and whatever company. And so those conversations are absolutely happening. And if anyone is interested in creating an Eclipse collab flavor for their retail channel, we're absolutely all ears.
Good. Well, I'm in Texas, so you got the coast covered, Aylon, but you need to kind of meet us halfway here. So we'll see what we can do, maybe in HEB or one of the regional chains. So let's back up a little bit, because it sounds like things are moving well. You got off to a great start. You had a huge change of plans thanks to COVID, but you come around that, and hopefully looking forward to renewed food service as it comes back. But let's go back more to where you started out. So you made this transition. You described very nicely and eloquently what it was appealing about getting into the plant-based arena, and why ice cream and dairy. And I know, although you can't give too many specifics, you're obviously not going to stop at ice cream. There's a lot more dairy platforms out there. But let's go back to when you started. I mean, you got an impressive number of investors that you ticked off a few of those. But that didn't just fall in your lap. I mean, let's go back to the beginning. So, I mean, did you start with your partner right off the bat, or did you have this idea and then look for a partner? Take me through the early days of how you got started, because there are a lot of people, both in the audience and who we work with, who are in the startup area, and they love to hear from those who've done it, what they've learned and what they had to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. The story is that I was working at the Good Food Institute, and I was interacting with a lot of people in our space, right? And one of the things that I did at some point was I went into Hampton Creek to do a tour there and just meet some of the team. And that was, I guess, that was Thomas and my meet cute. It was the first time we really met. He served my team. I forget what it was. I think he cooked us up the Just Egg. It was just coming out. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we chatted, and it was just a normal conversation, and we parted ways. And then actually maybe like a year after that, a friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to meet the most talented product developer in the United States?" Because he knew that I was interested in starting a company in the space. I was very transparent with everyone, including at the Good Food Institute, that my end goal was to start a company. The Good Food Institute, first, was an amazing place to learn the industry, and second, amazing place to make an impact immediately while I figured out.
I have a lot of respect for the Good Food Institute.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it was great to be able to make that impact and work in the industry while I figure out where I can make the biggest impact. And anyways, my friend came to me. He said, "Hey, you want to meet this guy? He's incredibly talented." I don't know what he said to him, but I guess Thomas wanted to meet me as well. And we kind of got set up on like a blind date almost. And we sat down and we talked and said, "Hey, what do you think about this idea of going and creating products that we really can believe in and we really can get out to the world?" And Thomas said, "Yeah, I mean, I think that is absolutely a huge opportunity." He is basically an emulsion genius, master, right? Because working on the mayonnaise and the dressing, those are all emulsions. And what is dairy if not an emulsion? And so he said, let's do this. Like, I think we can do this. And so we got together and we started working on it, on the project. And the story of how everything kind of accelerated is actually, it's a great story. So we decided it was late submission, like 2 days before the last day to submit to Y Combinator, which is the most prestigious tech accelerator in the world. And we said, let's do this. Like, let's just apply. And in the application, we listed our idea, which was really the Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods of Dairy. And we said that we had created a prototype of sour cream, which was indistinguishable from dairy. So it was a big claim, and it was not necessarily indistinguishable at the time. It was really good, but it was still, we had worked on it for about a few weeks, so it was not perfect. And so they accepted us to interview, and they invited us in to interview, and we did what Thomas does best, and we plated up this beautiful spread with the sour cream, and we put our sour cream next to Daisy, which is the best-selling sour cream in the U.S., next to Tofuti. And we had all of the panelists taste it and do the blind taste test right in front of us and tell us what they thought. And two out of the four were convinced that ours was the dairy. One out of the four knew that ours was not. And then the fourth was just like, what is going on here? Just too confused. But later that day, we got a call that said, "Hey guys, we want you to join Y Combinator, come be part of this program." And the rest is history, because once we got into that program, then it really allowed us to get in front of the right people. Like Alexis Ohanian, he actually was a partner in Y Combinator back in the day, and he's in that network. And from there, things just kind of almost like lifted themselves, I think, with the excitement of plant-based and honestly, the quality of the product.
Gotcha. So get into Y Combinator, and the rest is history. And make sure you have a good spread before when you interview.
I think so. Thank you for calling that out because that's not very relatable advice. I think the real advice here is that investors love tasting amazing food because there's nothing more tangible than actually tasting a product and saying, okay, I can imagine this succeeding because I literally just tasted this, and all this requires, if it's an investor that is thinking long term, all this it requires is for this company to execute and scale. And of course, those are very difficult things. But if you have founders that you believe in and the product is amazing, then it's just a matter of how do we get the right resources in place to make this happen. And so that would be my piece of advice: is just create amazing products, and I think then things will fall into place.
Yeah, and of course there are so many great accelerators now. Obviously, Y Combinator is well known, but you've got at least a couple dozen I can think of throughout the country, and they typically run these boot camps and have people who've been through it, people who have money to invest. So I think for others who are looking for that, there are many available. I'm sure the Good Food Institute probably has a list of them on their website, would be my guess. So
that's right.
Thanks for that. Okay, so you get going in Y Combinator. You've got obviously you've got your hands on some good technology. Looking back, can you just share some of the lessons learned? And I wish I had known that before. What I know now, I wish I had known then. I think that's always interesting to hear.
Yeah. So let's start with a technical one that was pretty funny. Is we had actually we had our first customer sign up, and we had the first what was sort of like a purchase order, but early days startups, it's even less official than that. And so we had a deadline we had to meet, and so we went to our production facility and we created the liquid base that we needed to create. And at the time, we were so small that we were operating in not the main production facility, but kind of like the side production facility of our co-man. And yeah, so just the quality standards there were not as stringent. They were still, of course, acceptable. But what happened was we came back to the office. We had produced this product. It was a big relief. We were going to meet our purchase order. We were actually going to be able to go to market. And what we saw was just a few days later, our liquid base was starting to get thicker and thicker. And a few days after that, it was completely goopy, like a yogurt. And we said, what is going on here? And we put on our QA hats and we said, what could possibly be happening? And what ended up happening is that we had LAB inculcation of our base. And because it was functioning like dairy, that actually caused it to turn into yogurt, like that natural process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we essentially had this learning of, okay, first, QA is the most important thing for a food company. So we got to make sure we are buttoned up. And so we buttoned up in a huge way after that, both of course for safety, but also so our product remains milk and not yogurt. And what else we learned is that we can make yogurt pretty easily. So there was a good learning from there. Yeah, that's the one thing.
You may have given away your next category you're attacking, but so that makes a lot of sense, or that's a good story. And I'd like to you mentioned your co-manufacturer, and you don't have to reveal who you use, but a lot of startups that I work with, I often get the question, I'm struggling with finding a co-manufacturer. I'm struggling working with a co-manufacturer. They're not doing what I thought they would do. It just seems to be a real challenge for a lot of food companies. And just wanted to know if you could share any advice you have or any experience you had. I mean, was that an issue for you at first, or did you have somebody kind of right off the bat?
Yeah, I think we are both in a unique kind of place with with our ability to work with co-man, and then we also face the same challenges that other people face. So the unique part is what I mentioned before, that kind of part of our secret sauce is that we can run on dairy lines. So unlike a lot of the other innovative plant-based and just food players, we don't need to introduce custom equipment, which I totally understand. If you need to introduce like a lot of custom equipment and custom processing, a co-man, it's a volume game in the end. Like they don't have an interest in now for a company that does no volume to start investing. So I totally understand how that would be very challenging. I think for us, yeah, we've had, you know, the typical challenges of not being on your own schedule, right? Like if we have a big purchase order come through and we want to fulfill it right away, well, it doesn't work like that. You need X amount of time before you can schedule with the co-man. Or if if we want to create a custom flavor that's a small MOQ, well, the co-man has a larger MOQ. And so, yeah, I don't really have any words of advice other than I think it's important to just find the right partner. And I've talked to a lot of people who know a lot more about scaling up production than me. And one of the things that really stuck with me, I spoke with the head of basically production innovation for one of the largest food companies in the world. And what he said was that early on, you have to find a co-manufacturer that is making money from your interactions. And it seems counterintuitive, but basically what he's saying is you have to make sure that the co-man that you're working with really cares about your product and cares about the quality and cares about the safety of your product. Mm-hmm. Because in the end, if you're just an annoying bug, then they're going to cut corners with you. And you want to make sure that no corners are cut with your product, because nothing is going to kill your company faster than a recall and something bad happening, which of course is obvious, but to make that connection to making sure that your co-man has skin in the game and a long-term partnership and really understands that, I think that's key. And then of course the due diligence to make sure that is what your co-man is committed to, high quality, safe product.
That makes a lot of sense. And you said something important. While it may not always be possible to have a product that can use existing equipment, one of the advantages of your technology, as you said, is that if you can make ice cream, you can make our product. If you can make just about any dairy product, it sounds like it's a straight substitute. And I think that is something for aspiring food entrepreneurs to think through. If it's possible, it's obviously an advantage if you can make your recipe and your product in a way that can utilize commonly used equipment. Obviously, if you can't, you can't. But sometimes, I think an entrepreneur may be so dead set on a certain way to do it that they may be missing an opportunity to keep the same quality. As you say, in the end, it's got to taste good, but perhaps can be made differently than they had anticipated. So that's good advice. All right, so you're moving along. What's the future hold? What's the end game? I mean, where are you going to be a year from now, 5 years from now? What's your expectation? What's your hope? What's your dream?
Yeah, the real vision for our ice cream, because that's the product in the market today, right? Is, like I said, on the food service side, to be in every single one of these large QSRs, and also every single one of the awesome regional or local burger shops doing shakes with Eclipse, and ice cream shops making the Eclipse collaboration flavors. So that's on the retail side. On the food service side. On the retail side, again, being in every single Walmart, being in every single Whole Foods, and if you're in the Bay Area, every single Berkeley Bowl. That's an excellent grocery store.
I know it well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of my favorite grocery stores in the whole world. So good. Anyways, they're not paying us, so we shouldn't talk too much more about them.
So you basically want to be the ice cream czars.
Yeah. I think we just want ubiquity for the ice cream. And when we look at the long run, the vision for Eclipse is really to I mean, the vision for our whole industry, right, is to make the plant-based choice, so the sustainable, healthy, and humane choice, the default choice, like the better choice. And so when you look at the long run of Eclipse, it's really to be like PepsiCo, but for plant-based. Mm-hmm. Because in the end, we win, the world wins, people win when these plant-based products are the default. They're what kids go to school, and the milk that they drink is a plant-based milk. And instead of the McRib that they get a plant-based McRib, because who cares? Like it's just a slab of something in between bread, right? And as long as Eclipse can get our products to taste just as good, to be just as affordable, and to be just as accessible, then we will achieve that. And you know, Pat Brown said, the CEO and founder of Impossible Foods, said that, and I totally agree with him, people eat meat in spite of how it's made, not because of how it's made. And I would argue that people drink dairy and eat cheese because it's delicious. It's not because it comes from a cow. It's actually kind of weird that it comes from a cow. And so we are reintroducing and reinventing the way that we think about food, because who cares where it comes from, as long as it's good for me and it makes me feel good and it's priced right and it tastes amazing, then why wouldn't I substitute? And so I think when we talk about the future, like, yes, I don't think of you going to Starbucks and ordering a latte that you will need to specify, I want the plant-based milk. Like, I think you can have Eclipse there and it is exactly like milk. And yeah, you can specify if you want an oat milk, because that's a little different, or a soy milk, but really let's give people these perfect replacement products. And that's how we change the world.
Well, you see it happening certainly in the meat category. You look at the dairy case, it's amazing what's happened just really in a few years. And you're right, it's because you're not asking people to sacrifice taste, convenience, price. You're saying, hey, you've got an equal choice. Why not go for the one that's going to be better for the environment, animal welfare, some people would say health, and or some combination thereof. Makes perfect sense. Now, when you go into the food service and you want to be in every Sonic and Dairy Queen and everybody that serves ice cream, you want to maintain that Eclipse branding? Is it going to be Eclipse inside, or how is that going to work? How will people know it's your product in there?
Yeah, I think in a similar way to how the Beyond Burger is at Carl's Jr., right? And it's called the Beyond Star, or at Del Taco, it's I forget what it's called, like the Beyond Del Taco, and all the other places that Beyond Impossible are in and are branded. That's what we will do with our products. Even though you're right, like with a milkshake, it's just kind of a shake. It's not like you can see the ball of ice cream and it says Eclipse on it. But yeah, I think that's more of a marketing thing. And the beautiful thing is that consumers really seek these products out. And large operators and like your QSRs, they realize that this is a way to reinvent their brand and to make their brand younger and to bring in a new, different consumer through the door. And so the winds are behind our back when it comes to doing that and having a branded product out in the market.
I think of that as a trust mark, I guess. So it's funny because I'm ordering some vegan Latin food this evening, including a Beyond Arepa. And I kind of know what to expect because I'm assuming they're using Beyond Meat in their arepa. So totally get it. So I think that's the advantage for not just for you, but for the end user, that, okay, I can trust that this is going to be what I expect because I know the ingredient that's in there. All right, Aylon, I'm going to ask you a tough question now, and I don't want you to skirt it. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
So before starting Eclipse, I would say cookies and cream. We just released, actually, it's just getting put out in the market right now, a strawberry. And I know that sounds totally absurd because like whose favorite ice cream is strawberry? But this strawberry ice cream that Thomas created is honestly, it's the best ice cream I've ever had. So now I'm a strawberry person. I say it begrudgingly because really, I think I'm still a cookies and cream person. But I'll wait for our cookies and cream to come out, and then I can go back to that.
And how about your consumers? What are they voting for? What's your most popular?
Yeah, so yeah, our most popular flavor is cookie butter, which is, have you ever flown Delta and gotten the little Biscoff cookie?
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
It's this wild speculoos cookie flavor. It's super indulgent, super rich, and it is amazing. It's like, I mean, you can't tell that it's made from plants, and in the end, that's what we need to do. So that's the fan favorite.
That's great. What else would you like to tell us about you and your company and future plans?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to try the product, anyone listening, we ship nationwide in the United States. So if you go to shop.eclipsefoods.com, you can order it directly to your door. So that's obviously exciting. If you want to follow us and see kind of what's the marketing team up to, then you can check out at Eclipse Foods on Instagram. Again, that's at Eclipse Foods, very simple. We're also on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I mean, we're ever growing. So in terms of job opportunities and opportunities to collaborate, we're definitely open. So check out our website, eclipsefoods.com/careers. And even if we don't have a role open for your skill set, just shoot us a note, because who knows what's coming down the pipeline. We are growing very, very quickly, and things are evolving day by day. So those are the obvious plugs.
Well, thanks for that. And I am gonna order some. My wife is vegan. I don't really drink any cow milk anymore. So, and I've tried quite a few of the vegan ice creams out there. We had discovered Frankie and Joe's when we were in Seattle, and I'm looking forward to trying Eclipse. I haven't had it yet, so I'm looking forward to it. And I'll be thinking about those micelles and the emulsion when I eat it. My wife will probably just be thinking about how good it tastes. So, Aylon Steinhart, I want to thank you so much for your time. It was a fascinating discussion in a category that's on fire, and you're bringing, it sounds like, some very unique technology, which is also exciting, because that's really what we're going to be needing to keep the plant-based world competing with the animal protein world and hopefully surpassing it. So my only thought is, once we get to it tastes just as good as, we can start moving to taste even better then. And by the way, saving the planet, healthier, better for the animals. So best of luck, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Great. All right.